curious, like, what skills do you think listeners should be working on when thinking of, I want to be someone who is deploying new AI tech at my company?
Yeah, I think it's one really understanding the landscape in which those tools work. So, what I would say on our end is like we tend to be conservative around AI specifically because there's just a lot that's unknown and privacy is such a big aspect here. So, like when you put those two unknowns, legal's my best friend. We talk all the time. Pretty because, yes, I think mobs can be stewards of them, but I think if you're just saying that it's like you're on the cool train, you're not gonna get very far because once you get into a conversation with legal, they're gonna ask you the hard questions. Like, what is this, how is the AI training on data? Like what type of data? Right. And so I think really just understanding those concepts really well as you navigate wanting to champion those tools itself, really having a good understanding of the tech stack and what is because I think everyone's jumping on like I joked about it recently where I was like, everyone's calling their AI like Copilot, right? So really just understanding like the features that are coming out in existing tooling, right? To really understand that overlap. Like, do you need to get another AI tool if on your roadmap there is already AI components being embedded in some of those tools? And how to get ahead of that curve, I think, is super important. Understanding the concepts and understanding really where the value is. And so, what I would say, one like quick and easy way, like this is like a common problem at multiple organizations, is like sales writing emails.
Mhm.
We all know they hate not, I'm not going to generalize, but not all salespeople are great at writing their own emails or content. And I think that like generative AI there, or even like content marketing, is really a great place to be a champion in the low hanging fruit.
Mhm.
I think we're still in the early stages. I would say the last tool that I bought that was generative AI was probably like a year and a half ago. And I was very skeptical of it. And it was really because we were having a problem with content and content being delivered globally for sales.
Mhm.
And so we jumped on the bandwagon with a proof of concept to buy a tool to help us scale, especially when you're talking about sales departments of like over 500.
Mhm.
Right? Like, how do you get the message right? And how do you give personalization at scale
Mhm.
to a sales organization across, not only that many people, but also regions and localization? And I think we're just still in the early stages of it. Like, I haven't seen a lot of tools that can really um, localize content for global organizations really well. I can think of one example of one tool that I heard that they can do it, and I'm really interested because even like some sales enablement
Mhm.
tools can, pick up different languages. And when you're in a global organization, I don't know what it said in Japanese.
Mhm.
It looks like they're out of office.
S
Right. So I think generative AI for content, I think is a great low hanging fruit that people can really explore um, and get some wins in. I think it's hard to kind of see some of the other automation pieces because
Mhm.
I'm of the mindset that sometimes when you over automate, you can create more havoc
Mhm.
in certain places because you can't see everything, you can't control it.
Mhm.
One of my follow-up questions for this is, and I mean, we've covered AI on the show so much, but
Mhm.
you kind of touched on a few things that I thought were valuable for us to just unpack, and maybe just kind of one aspect of that is this like hype cycle versus the use case. Like, I'm a power user of AI. I use it constantly for way too many use cases, but I also don't think it's the answer to all of our problems. I just made a post on LinkedIn where I'm like, it's a tool, but if you think it's a hammer, then everything's going to start looking like a nail. How do MOPS leaders start to kind of understand where does this tool fit into the overall use case? Like, what kind of process or thought, thought exercise can people put in place to actually like get through the hype, get through all the prompt engineering stuff that's out there, and get to something of substance and value for your team?
Yeah, I think about repeatable processes and scale. Like if you're having a scale problem. And so like in that use case, when we did do that pilot, we were having a scale problem. Like we had one content marketer per region supporting too many from a ratio perspective. And then being able to provide personalization, which I think a lot of companies struggle
Mm.
with. And so in that case, that's where I was like, I think that this is what can be applied. And it was something that like a user brought to us. And when I first heard of it, I was like, you can't do this. And then I did see the power of it.
Yeah.
And I think stress testing, I think scale overall, I think is a good place. But I think understanding where there's human intervention in the case of AI. I mean, I use ChatGPT. I actually showed my sister how to use it. We're currently doing her master's, and she was like struggling, and she was like, "Oh, I have to create like a one-page paper on like a summary of this, but I have bullet points, and I just need an output." And I was like, "Oh, you just use ChatGPT," and she was like, "Chat GPT?" I was like, "All right, just give me the inputs. We'll spit it out in like 15 seconds." We spat it out, and she was like, "Oh, send me the link to the ChatGPT." And I was like, "T, okay, don't worry. I'm pretty sure you'll use this for more of your
Yeah.
masters." Text.
It's
So
I'm
I think
thinking
it
of our AI transcription tool is gonna have a fun time figuring out what ChatGPT is and
what?
GPT. But yeah, I think that's a great point on like thinking about the fundamentals, like what are the things that are gonna help us scale. There's a lot of shiny objects right now, especially with AI tools, and how do we like prioritize the list of things that, will help us reach our business goals versus just trying to try something and do a POC because someone at the company thinks it's a cool tool. But yeah, just any I feel like we could probably have a whole separate podcast episode on GPT or AI
Mhm.
topics.